Welcome to Ministry Pivot. This is Reverend Russ back again with another episode. Super excited that you continue to join us on ministrypivot.com and even on the podcast. Thankful for those who are subscribing and those who are downloading, those who are sharing, and those who are using the study guide to be able to go deeper. Today, I'm excited because we have another great group of leaders, of pastors, of friends who are on the podcast today talking about what does it mean to pivot your planning. I don't know about you, but since this COVID season has started, planning started to look different. And so I have some great guests who are going to lead us in that conversation. We have Pastor Rafael Abreu. And if I messed it up, Pastor Rafael will help me with it. But he is a associate pastor, online pastor at Life.Church over there in Oklahoma City, and he's leading those groups. He'll share more, but they do 90 services a week, 90 services online a week, and so he and the team lead those. And so we have him there. We also have Pastor John Faison Sr., who is the pastor at Watts Grove Baptist in Tennessee. I didn't want to mess it up, in Tennessee. And so super excited about Pastor Faison coming and being a part. He is doing awesome things out there. And he just opened up a second location a couple months ago. And I know that and those pieces are going extremely well. And then we have my brother again, all of the friends, Pastor Samuel Green Jr., who is, I called him Pastor. I know he's Reverend. But I called him Pastor. He is the 7th Episcopal district, so the South Carolina area of the AME Church. He leads the Christian education department there, but he actually also leads many of the live experiences that you may see them do down there between Bishop Green. Shout out Bishop Green. And so we're thankful. And again, I'm Reverend Russ. I serve at Kingdom Fellowship AME Church. Shout out my senior pastor, Reverend Watley. Appreciate you, Doc. So I introduced the team, but I want them to introduce themselves a little bit more. And so Pastor Rafael, since I jacked up your last name, can you please come back and share your last name correctly and a little bit about yourself?
It's Abreu, but you didn't jack it up. You did a good job, so it's totally fine. I'm used to so many variations of my first and last name, but yeah, so I am the associate Church Online pastor on the Church Online team. I help lead our team. We're about 16 people on our particular team. Craig Rochelle is our senior pastor. And as Reverend Russell just stated, we have 90 services a week. And we have a volunteer team that welcomes people in the chat during the service. And they span across 52 countries a week. So we have about it's just a growing team, and especially in this era with COVID, it's just been even all the more important to reach out in this way, in this digital strategy, and gather people online. And so pretty exciting what God's been doing through Church Online, and as that continues to grow throughout the world. So Amen. It's a little bit about me, what I get to be a part of. And that last name is, I'm originally from Puerto Rico. So you have to roll the R like that. Yeah. No, you don't.
I'm not gonna. I will not attempt it again.
It's all good.
That's awesome. Pastor John.
Awesome, man. Pastor John Faison, Senior. Excited to be senior pastor of the Grove with our main campus in Nashville and another campus in Franklin. Nashville is a great space and a great place to do ministry. We've had some challenging pivot word times recently with tornadoes and COVID, but God has been very, very faithful to us, and we're excited to be a part. I'm just excited to be a part.
Amen. Glad to have you, Reverend Green.
Hey, good afternoon. Hey, everybody. I'm just so grateful to be a part of this conversation today. I'm the Director of Christian Education here in the 7th Episcopal District, which covers the state of South Carolina. Been serving here now for about 3 years, and part of my role includes planning our district conferences as well as now our annual conferences. So our system operates on a 200 plus year strict policy or procedure that includes a lot of meetings as it relates to our structure. And so this past year, I've had to make the pivot in providing the virtual opportunity so that the 200 year can keep going. And so that's primarily where I situate in a lot of other things and other projects as well.
Yeah, no, that's good. Sam, just tell me real quick, how many churches are in that district that you all deal with?
Yeah, we have 490 churches in South Carolina, in all the areas. So we also say we're in 46 out of the 47 counties.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I want to just give context to that part. But Pastor Faison, I want to go to you first. So we're talking about ministry pivot. We're talking about pivot your planning. I know, again, shout out my senior pastor, Pastor Watley. I know we planned pretty well at our church, but not that anybody could plan for what. And I've been saying it almost every episode, for what the second Sunday in March 2020 was going to look like. We joked. I saw a meme, and I'll say it again, that somebody said, if I knew the last Sunday was the last Sunday I was going to be able to shake him and rock him, I'd have shook him and rock him, because it nobody knew. We all went. We thought, man, God was kind today. It was dope during the week, and then come Saturday, it was a little bit skeptical. Come Sunday, I know for us at Kingdom, on that Sunday, we literally only had one service because the governor hadn't made the move just yet. So we're going to have a lesser, but we only had one service, and then we had to record whatever happened at 8 had to go up for 10 and 12. And then we had to kind of just shelter in place like everybody else. We had to figure it out throughout the week. So I want to ask you, like, how has your church, because if I'm not wrong, your second location isn't that old. So I want to ask the question around how, for you as a pastor, how have you pivoted your planning in light of what COVID has done?
Man, that's a whole show worth.
I know,
right?
I know.
Man, second Sunday in March flipped everything for us like it flipped everything for everybody else. I believe we did meet the third Sunday in March, though, that third weekend. We're in Tennessee. We're in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, we got a little different kind of leadership. So we did meet, but our last weekend together, so a Saturday night service and then 3 on Sunday. Our last weekend together was the third Sunday in March. Wow. But by the third Sunday in March, we knew this is probably going to be the last time we get together. So we got a chance to kind of enjoy that, and then kind of moved into what we have now, which is everything online, virtual.
Yeah.
COVID gave everybody a second location. Everybody, an online campus, whether you had one or not, you opened up in order to survive an online campus. Now we were fortunate in that we had already put the systems in place for online to work for us, but it was just worship, right? It was just kind of sharing what we did. We always broadcast and streamed our 11 o'clock service, our last service. Mm-hmm. But man, we went from an online worship to an online church, which is the regular engagement throughout the week. I would say, and many pastors would say, man, this is not the season where preaching or worship grows your church. What grew our church was not preaching. People during COVID, man, it's a church hopper's dream. You can go to 5 churches every Sunday, right?
Yes.
You and most people do. Most people, by the time they get to you, they've been to two or three services already, right? They check it in, check it out, what's happening. So you're not necessarily during this time going to grow the church via preaching and worship. But what we saw was our church grew through pastoral care, creating modules, programming, opportunity for connection throughout the week. That's really what became our go-to and really our lifeblood in terms of keeping the church connected, keeping folks connected. From seniors who may not be familiar with technology, we create what we call a seasoned saints check-in every Wednesday at 12 noon. And they don't need a computer. They just call in. It's a prayer line. But man, we have devotion and worship on the phone.
That's cool. That's cool.
They love it, right?
Yeah.
Saturday night is like a pastor's check-in on Facebook Live and do it online as well. during phone as well. But creating those spaces and moments of connection, youth and children's stuff online, everything shifted, man. Now, as far as that second campus goes, that second campus was launched in January of 2019. And so that first year, we're rocking, we're rolling, we're building momentum, but people really check you out for like that first year to see if you're gonna stick around, see if are you legit, are you really here? Yeah. Or you just, kind of fly by night. We went to another county to launch that campus. So our main campus is in Davidson County, Nashville proper. We went to the city of Franklin for that second campus. And man, we did it in a movie theater, right? So we don't have a brick and mortar space. We rent and lease the movie theater every week. Yeah. Well, man, after third Sunday in March, Franklin had nowhere to go. They had nowhere to go. So everything kind of goes through the main campus, but we try to keep connected with those folk in Franklin, again through the pastoral care and the programmatic kind of moves. So that was the biggest shift for us, just going from 3 campuses to 1. That one being the online campus, but making sure that we disciple people, connected folks, and cared for people, even in the midst of it through the online media. That was a big shift for us. Yeah. And man, having an amazing staff, having incredible volunteers. If you never knew that you needed to develop leaders before, this will teach you real quick. Leadership development is not a afterthought of the church. It must be at the forefront. You got to develop along the way, because you never know when you walk into a space like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think what I heard you saying, just to reiterate, that you also had a pivot of what the focus was, right? So while church didn't change that much, but how you delivered it changed, and then not only what you expected to give to the people, but what you wanted the people to expect to receive shifted. And I think that's brilliant. I think that hopefully for those listening and kind of watching would be helpful. And I want to go to Pastor Rafael. I want you to help us just as well. With things were different in Oklahoma City as well, I'm sure, along planning. But now I've had the privilege of being in Life.Church, and I remember being there several years ago, over 8 years ago, and you all had not just. I think I went at a time where Pastor Allen told us that Pastor Craig literally would not need to preach again for 3 months because he had recorded all of the sermons. And I know he shifted that in this season, but I want you to talk a little bit about how you all, because when I was writing this article that went on Outreach at first, shout out to Outreach, I was thinking through who to invite on this one. I thought of Life.Church because I knew how far ahead you all planned. And I wanted to hear kind of the reaction on how you all even made that pivot during that season, because you all had stuff planned out, like artwork and videos, and I think more than I've seen most churches have. So can I ask you the same question? Kind of what was that pivot in planning looking like in that mid-March timeframe?
Yeah, so I would echo a lot of what we felt. If we kind of go back to that time, it's oh my gosh, even though you can have so many things planned out, who could have planned for COVID, right? And this pandemic. And for us, while we did have a solid plan, we didn't plan for 35 locations to have to close down quick across the US. And that's a call our leadership team made. And it was a good call. Since we had already a pretty strong online strategy, we've been doing church online now for 15 years. If anything, what happened for us was the amount of traffic that came in, because church online didn't close down, right? If anything, it picked up. And so all of a sudden, we got an influx of traffic, so much so that even it halted our chat every now and then. And so our servers around the world, around the US, were having trouble, including Facebook. I think that weekend was reporting outages just because of the sheer amount of churches trying to use Facebook Live or the church online platform. It was pretty heavy. But I think for us, if I could think about just kind of thinking back, what changed for us, if anything, not a lot changed with regard to online ministry. If anything, it intensified. And we did see a whole lot more people. And just something that I would just echo that John mentioned, that when you mentioned about community, I think it's important because I think even though people were kind of starting to get used to a new norm and getting used to this, right? These Zoom calls and what is this online, like kind of revisiting their definition of community because it has changed. And it wasn't COVID that changed the definition of community, it was social media, because whether we realize that or not, it's been redefined. And I'm not here to say that in person is better than virtual. I think they both have their pros and cons, but I think the definition of community has been redefined. Fellowship can happen online. Fellowship can happen virtually. People can give online. People can go through membership online. You can experience great, rich community online. And so for us, one of the ways we do that, and one thing that we continue to pay attention to and focus on is our life groups.
Yeah.
Making sure that our life groups are meeting around the world, both in person and virtually. Obviously, the in-person depended upon the country that people were in and the restrictions. But if you could meet in person, definitely. But also for us, if anything, it was bringing even more clarity around, okay, how can you lead a Zoom group effectively, or these virtual life groups effectively, and equipping people out there and churches out there who wanted more on that. And one thing I would say real quick is if you are looking for resources along those lines, Open.Church is really great. It's where Life.Church, we give out free resources, and you'll find even a guide in there, like how to lead small groups and other resources along those lines. So in a nutshell, I think is how I'd respond to that.
No, that's good. I mean, so you all took on more. I know your physical locations focused more on the online campus. And I know for us, like our church, we're one of, I don't know, 50, 60,000 churches you all have, maybe even more than that, who are using the church online platform. And so I remember dealing with our tech team and our volunteers on that weekend because the chat was disabled. And that was one of the benefits. And we were trying to navigate it. And so we did this text message thing just to kind of keep that. But I can only imagine the influx of churches who were surprisingly so weren't online at all, as Pastor John alluded to. There were several churches who weren't online. Givelify is a church organization that we use quite often, and I talk with them all the time. We actually have Ministry Pivot that is on budgeting, and Wally, who's the CEO, shared and talked about the fact that there were a lot of churches who at that moment didn't even have electronic giving and called them the next day to try to get it on board, which is just phenomenal to even think that we're still operating in that way. But I think that's really helpful. Reverend Sam, I want to ask you because the number of 400 churches, and you have churches. I've been blessed to come and be with you and Bishop Green several times, and you all have churches that kind of go through the spectrum. So you have smaller churches, medium churches, larger churches. And this is a loaded question, but what did you all see as the biggest pivot to planning as you all, because you all sit in the central office, right? Your role is to support all of the churches in that district, which is a big deal. What was what was one of the key pieces for you all in helping churches pivot their planning once COVID hit? And I know a part of it is you all decided to move or be a resource for online worship for the district, if that's right. I'm gonna stop there and let you, because I don't want to tell it. I want you to tell it.
No, that's a unique part of the story for this year is that, most jurisdictional offices, particularly in the AME church, we do not pastor. And so we do not have week-to-week worship. And so one of the biggest things that we had to do, I think that started it must have started the third week of March, is that every week now we've been providing online worship from a district office, particularly for a lot of the smaller churches and just churches without the resources. And it's funny because we had been working programmatically to talk about technology and different resources and adapting a lot of our just system over the years. I mean, we talked about Givelify. We have been moving to have a very aggressive goal to get a certain percentage of churches online with that. We also have been partners with ACS Technologies for over 20 years through the ministries before we even got to the 7th district. So we'd already been talking about different tweaks to help support, I guess, more of a hybrid model, and also just moving over to some of the more operational things to be technology driven. But now that we have become both jurisdiction office and weekly church, as well as in addition to everything that we've been doing, it's been quite the handful, because a part of our job as being a jurisdictional office, we have to handle the legal, also the training for churches, make sure that they're healthy. Not to mention the fact that throughout this year, we also had a civil rights uprising as well. So we had to respond to that. And part of our role with sitting in the Capitol is to respond to that. So we did a march. It was a lot of things that we've had to do to pivot. And I think that most importantly, I think through it all is that we realized that in the beginning, it was more of an interim as let's hold them. And now it's looking more of a long term. Like we had an end date initially for August to stop the weekly worship. And now we're talking about Christmas. And it's quite interesting because, for my dad, he has not pastored since, for like 16 years. And now we have to plan in a way where we're still trying to help provide things for churches that do not have the means to do so, but also to keep them connected to the faith and to keep them connected to some sense of normalcy that they were used to while still pivoting into this future. So I'm, as we were talking about planning, I'm kind of like in between, because we don't really have an idea of when the next pivot will come back to us to kind of put it back onto the churches. We're working to help support them and to give them more resources, but a lot of it, what we've noticed for churches is that if you did not already have a plan or a budget in place for technology and for production, then it's very hard to get that now during the pandemic.
That's good. That's good. I'm going to stay with Sam, and then we're going to roll around, but I want to stay on this because one of the things, again, when I was writing the article pieces and kind of thinking through this conversation, I knew planning was a big deal. And I also know that Reverend Sam helps to serve before COVID with just all of the worship experiences, and there are elements to it. Like I know at our church, again, shout out to Kingdom Fellowship, we have a creative team of people that we talked with for years. We've had that has kind of migrated now into just some of the younger staff on the team. We have a production team. And then we have kind of the media team that talks through stuff. But Sam, I want to ask you specifically for churches, right? Because again, one of the purposes of Ministry Pivot is to be practical help. And so if somebody's saying, okay, yeah, I need to plan, I haven't really, I've been dealing with week by week because it's been so many things as we all have alluded to. But now I need to really plan. I need to really work through what God is saying to me. If you're the senior leader, if you're not the senior leader, and like myself, and you support the senior leader, what kind of ideas can I bring to the table? Because I think all roles are truthfully important. But Sam, what are some key things that as you've been planning your weekly worship, but also you plan conferences at planning for worship, what are some key pieces that you feel like need to be on the table, that pastors need to be thinking about, that pastors and leaders need to be considerate of as they're looking at planning?
Yeah, but Pastor John already alluded to the fact that leadership development is key throughout this. And so we have been working with I had been developing a production team for quite some time to help with the conferences. And now that production team becomes like the ministry planning team for us. And so because we have 490 churches and 47,000, people on roll or whatnot, as churches have submitted, it does require a lot of work. And so we've had to do a lot of trainings and a lot of team development. So I'm always sending the team on more capacity driven type of training so that we can learn as much as we can about the industry of event planning, but also to figure out what is the next step for technology. So for local churches, I would say that don't do it by yourself. And I know that's really tough because I'm speaking directly to pastors, who are already 65 plus. Every day I get a call from someone that says, I'm not, what's the word that they say? Technology savvy or as literate. And it warms my heart. And I think about my grandmother who had been going to church forever. And now she did not have, internet was not an active part of her life. And so those churches are really struggling. And so if you cannot do it by yourself, you should develop a team of people who are at least able to figure out how do we connect people together. And so I like to start with backwards planning. And so we kind of think about from a ministry perspective of what is it that we want to communicate about God? What is it that we believe that the experience should look like? And so from there, we kind of plan back to figure out what tools we need and trying to put people in place. And so as we're going through these series now of annual conferences, we've noticed that people missed aspects of online worship. And so we've scheduled and facilitated, when it's all said and done, 6 live recordings that happens over 2 days. And so that requires a training within itself to have to now train people who were not in front of the camera before, and now to give them production skills and all these other types of things as well. So it's quite a bit of a task, but we take it day by day and realize that we were not in school to be NBC producers, but we're making it every day.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I've seen, I get the alerts when the 7th goes live, and I get a lot of alerts. And so I've seen you all pull together several of these events. Pastor John, I want to jump onto that, and then Pastor Rafael, I'm gonna go to you after this. But along with the leaders, right? What are some other elements, or even let's just staying with the leaders, right? Because I think we've learned now in this season, I think more than any others, even from my role, our pastor has always been pushing us to build teams, always pushing us to develop other leaders. What are some of the key pieces as you look at planning in this different season, right, that have to be on the table, but it's going to take people. And so what are some of the key people? Reverend Sam talked about the production team and but if I'm a pastor or if I'm a leader that's thinking about, okay, I need to plan out what God is saying from when this airs in October sometime to the end of the year, who do I need around the table, right? And then what kind of resources do I need to provide them with?
Oh my goodness. Man, you need a lot. you really do. I mean, you need front end folks who produce, who create, and then you need back end folks who can translate and who can evaluate what the product is actually being produced. One of the illustrations I like to share when it comes to online stuff is, man, if I got dressed up to go to church, and I get to church in person and the sound is bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got dressed up. I'm there. I drove.
Yeah.
I made an investment. Yeah. So I'm going to give you some time to fix the sound. And I'm probably going to even stay, if the sound is bad, to the end of service. Then I'll leave and probably make a decision I may not return.
Yeah.
If I come to online worship and the sound is bad, you got about 3 to 5 seconds to fix it.
Yeah.
Because if it's not fixed, click on to my next worship service. This is
you're totally right.
So you need front end folks to help you produce. Your media folk have to be legit. Your audio and your sound. Sound folks are absolutely vital. Man, we started contracting a sound engineer when we went live, because we understood that the sound produced in the sanctuary is not the same as the sound that goes through the board to the online audience.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And in this season, you can't afford to get that wrong.
Yeah.
So that's the shift we had to make. We were volunteer, we'll figure it out. No, not anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's trained professional sound engineer every day. Every
Yeah.
time we worship, handling the mix,
Yeah.
right? So to piggyback what Reverend Sam was talking about, man, what do I do if I don't have that on my staff? Well, partnership is the new leadership. It really
That's
is.
good.
What you will discover is there are folks in your city who know how to do this. We're in Music City. We're fortunate enough to have sound, like we're blocked from what we call Music Row. Right?
Okay. Okay.
So Music
Okay.
Row is a street of studios
Wow.
where about 80% of the country music in the world is recorded.
Wow. Okay.
50 to 60% of probably the rest of the music, gospel, R&B, and all the rest, is also recorded there. So we got sound folk everywhere. We got music people everywhere. Every waiter has a demo tape in Nashville. That's just kind of happening, right? So people are familiar with sound and production. So we're very, very fortunate to have that pool to pull from. But if you're not in Nashville, you're in a place where that's not the case, man, there's somebody in your city who knows how to do it. And this is not the time to have ego and to be worried about, well, I'm not talking to them, or that's a white church, or that's a black church, or you better get what you need so that you can survive. You better learn how to partner with people who are experts in the arena so that you can enhance what you're trying to offer. And you can make sure that you do it in a quality way. Partnership.
That's great. That's great. I think that's great, and that leads us into the conversation. Well, the question I wanted to ask Pastor Rafael, I want to ask you around, and I think Reverend Sam and Pastor John both said it, but this season, I think, leads us into a level of opportunity that we haven't seen before, and I've said it consistently, but as it relates to Life.Church, as it relates to the online campus, but just the church in general and planning, what opportunities are you all seeing? You spoke about and I'm gonna give you an assumed opportunity that I think you all were able to catch, is the fact that some churches just weren't ready. And they weren't ready to go online. They weren't ready to go online well. And so they went where they could hear well, where they could see well. And then I believe that you all may be, and I know we are too at Kingdom, we thank God that not necessarily the churches weren't ready, but we thank God that we were ready and that we had opportunities for people to plug in and people to serve. And so I wanted, and I heard you say a little bit around with your 90 services, there are leaders and volunteers needed for all of that. And I think one of the opportunities may have been you all have more people, whether they came from somewhere else or whether they came from one of your physical locations, that now they couldn't be a greeter at the door or a first impressions team person there. And maybe now their first impressions online. But I want to ask you, what are some of the opportunities that you all have seen in this season as it relates to planning, but just as it relates to church? What are some opportunities that you all have seen there?
So first thing I would say is, since you've gone online, congratulations, you're global. And you're reaching the world. And you're reaching outside of the scope of your city. And so the boundaries have changed. The boundaries are now the world. The internet goes where missionaries can't. That's a matter of fact. And so the internet reaches into close countries. And so guess what? You're also a digital missionary.
Yeah.
You can look at it like that. And so we have an incredible opportunity to leverage technology. I would just say one stat I will share is that last week, over 600 people made a decision to follow Christ at Church Online. That's in a week. And that's happening on average every single week at Church Online. People are coming to Christ. Muslims are coming to Christ. Like people from all walks of life, all around the world. It's happening. God is using this tool, and we have an incredible opportunity. And it's not something to be intimidated by. Mm-hmm. I think, John, you mentioned, hey, it's important to ensure that we have that pastoral care happening, that community is strong. Well, there are tools, there are technological tools that you can use. And one incredible opportunity that we have seen, and this is something that we launched right before COVID, and it went even more mainstream for us, was texting, simple texting. So we use a tool called Avocado. And Avocado, it sounds like avocado, but it's Avocado. This is a texting tool that you can use with no international fees. And you can automate it. So the text comes from Reverend Sam. Hey, it's Reverend Sam. So glad you came in. Once you can get people to opt in for that text, and however you attract people in via contact form on your website, or they create a new account on whatever, however you're capturing their information, you can also put an opt-in for a text, and then you can set up automations to where you can text people and say, hey, how can I pray for you? And it's all automated. So there's not somebody on the other end of our team sending like thousands of texts every week. But when somebody comes to Jesus and they fill out that form and we get their phone number, complete with international code, if they're in another country, man, our Abba Chattel, that program is going to text them and say, hey, it's Pastor Ryan. Notice congratulations, you just gave your heart to Jesus. I'd love to pray for you. Let's set up a time to talk. Here's my Calendly link. And then they can set up a Calendly link, and then they meet with a pastor. So you can pastor people at scale. And I think that the thing that I want to hone in on is follow-up. You can follow up at scale and make it feel extremely personal. The other way we do it is through HubSpot. We have HubSpot emails. So when people commit their lives to Christ, or they take a next step, any kind of next step, hey, I want to join a life group, or hey, I want to start some kind of program or ministry, you can actually enroll them into a HubSpot workflow where they'll get personalized automated emails from you. And it's not you typing it out, right, and hitting send, but it's timed. So every 2 days, every 3 days, for a whole year even, they can get emails from you, and they're different emails. So we also created the YouVersion Bible app through Life.Church. And so like when somebody comes to Jesus, their first email, hey, they get a Bible. It just happens to be a digital Bible. It's the YouVersion Bible app. But they're getting an email from our pastor, Alan George, that says, hey, it's Alan. I just want to say congratulations. It's been 6 days since you committed your life to Christ. I want to invite you back to the service. But oh, by the way, here's a free Bible. You can download it here. So just thinking of ways where you can follow up at scale, but keep it super, super personal. Those are just some tools that we use to help with that. And I think it's an incredible opportunity. I think people text, right?
Yeah.
Do a show of hands. Do you guys like use texting?
Yep.
Right? It's going to be all of us.
Yeah, easy.
So people, you don't have to download an additional app to keep up with people. Just use text, use a program, super simple. Not enough churches are taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
So
No, that's great. That's great. And you threw us into the section which we need to do, the practical side of it. What do leaders or pastors do now, right? So I know I need to work on my planning, but what do I do now? How do I do it? What are the resources that I need to use? And then what's the future look like? So I want to pull. He started y'all at the resources, so I want to just piggyback on that, go around resources, and then we'll do the how, and we'll do the future. But I know. So texting is major, right? I know for us at Kingdom, we started using Easy Text years ago, really on the youth side. Youth ministry, I think, is always going to be the forefront. So we did youth ministry stuff, and we used it there. We also use Gravity Forms. We use that all the time to do what you just said at Life.Church, where when people actually, our pastor makes the call and makes the mandate of join this church, receive Jesus Christ. And once they fill the form out, we have in the AME church, we have stewards. And so we have stewards assigned to each service. And so as soon as a form comes in, those stewards call that person and they walk them through whatever the next steps are. And then we get them into our system that we use is Fellowship One. But I think those tools, and I'm going to look at that texting tool. I'm going to put it in the show notes, but I'm going to look at that texting tool because I love the automated option of it. And so we'll do that. But Reverend Sam, what are some other tools that people can use, tools or resources that you use to help you plan, that people may be able to institute now this caveat, when planning now may look different in 30 days, in 60 days, because we don't know what. I saw a meme the other day and somebody said, I'm ready for watch night, like now, like I want this year to be over so we can get back to normal. But because the future is shifting so much, what are some tools that people can use now to help them plan or help them with discipleship as well? Sorry.
Yeah. So one of the tools that I didn't realize that we were even using, which is very basic. I'm trying to find the actual name of it, but we're doing like automatic phone calls as well. And so whatever robocall system that you have, and to realize that there's always a population of folks who still just want the basics of just a phone call. And so it kind of rolls out on Sundays. Bishop reads just a basic scripture, but it goes so viral that everyone is calling each other. Hey, did you get a phone call from the bishop? So it seems like it's a personal phone call. We're still doing our mailing. So every month people get a birthday card, as well as for couples, they get anniversary cards. And so that won't stop. We've been doing it for about 3 years. We're also, just like you all talked about the texting, we've been using texting for all of our conferences. And I think alongside with that is the resources. So for some people, they have teams that they can develop their own resources. We've also partnered with Think Orange to help with all of our Christian education materials. And so they were already looking to service predominantly Black churches. And so that's been a great partnership that we've been able to leverage. And so they're training people, and they have this tool called, oh my God, it's basically a application where, particularly for children's ministry and youth ministry, you can use their platform and you can drop in the videos that they already have, and you may be able to supplement on your own. And so it gives more of the creative, and you don't have to develop them on your own. So they've already, that team of people already works out like probably on the summer for 2021 materials already. So you can just drop it into, I think it's called Ministry Playlister, or Playlister is their tool. And so I'm starting to use that a little bit more as well. And then we are still looking on ways to tweak the evangelism. Again, I kind of wrestle in between, are we a local church? Are we a mega church? Are we just a supportive office? And so now we are really kind of doing more of that gradual release, that I do, we do, you do type of approach. And so we're leading and doing evangelism and discipleship. And so we have seen a lot of people accept Christ from just the district worship services and the annual conferences, which is not normally a piece that we've traditionally used for that. So because we now recognize the wider audience that we'll see, we are making every effort to realize that, hey, we have the discipleship third. Make sure that the discipleship third runs so that people know that this is not just an AME ritual. We're out here really trying to disciple people to Christ. So
yeah, no, that's good. I think those are, and I know you'll send me the exact name for what Orange is, and we'll put it in the show notes for those who are watching, those who are listening. You can download the show notes. I know we use a thing called Call 'em All, and we do that every Saturday as well. And Pastor sends out a prayer and a scripture every Saturday in preparation for Sunday worship. So I think that's awesome. Pastor John, what about tools for you?
Man, I would encourage people to use the tools that are already there, right? We've heard a lot of tools that might require a little investment, a little purchase, that kind of stuff. I want to shout out the free stuff. Right? Okay. Man, we do a prayer call every morning, Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. Central Standard Time on Instagram Live. Free. Prayer, global, goes all over the place. We started in March. It was meant to be a 30-day kind of focus. Man, God just said, keep going. And so we've been going almost 28 weeks, Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. We switch out, I'm on CELA. I'm on a bit of a break now. So I've got some of my staff filling in for it. But man, any day you can catch it. If you don't catch it at 6, it's live. So you can put it in the grid. So you can come back anytime, and it's available for you. You can come check it. Man, we have anywhere from 500 to 700 folk a day tapping into that prayer call. Again, free. I would encourage people to utilize texting for everything. Pastor Rafael is absolutely right. The texting piece is major for connection, but why not text for salvation? Why not text to be able to make a commitment to Christ, to be able to join the church, right? Let them walk down the digital aisle. Make a decision from their phone. And our system is real simple. You text new partner to a number, and as soon as you text it, you know how the system goes. There's automatic follow-up and catch up. That I want to say, I'm not sure, but I want to say we were able to procure that for free. I don't know. I don't listen. I just
That's
work
good.
in your practice. All the details.
That's a good place to be. That's a good place to be.
But I think I think especially for smaller churches, right, who are new in this space and may not have budgets for this, to jump into something major. Use the free stuff. You'll be surprised. Especially if you're a smaller church, what a prayer call, what a free prayer call can do to build community, to keep folks connected. I remember the first time we did this with our seniors. I couldn't see their faces. I missed them tremendously. At the end of every worship on the weekends, my wife and I would stand at the door and really hug on people and love on folks. And for a lot of those seniors, it's the only hug they got during the week, right?
Yeah.
For a lot of our seniors, their social calendar is set to worship.
Mm-hmm.
It's where they see their friends. It's where they connect with their pastors, where they connect with folks that they know. Well, man, they're at the house now and they can't leave, right? They don't really have the option. You're an elderly person. You got pre-existing conditions. You're a cancer survivor. You're wrestling with chemotherapy. Listen, this COVID thing is not a game, right? So they're still in danger, still at risk populations. They can't leave. Man, I couldn't see their faces, but I remember the first time I heard their voices. It was like seeing their face.
Wow.
I could see the smile through the phone, right?
Wow.
And I remember weeping, right? Because I hadn't seen them in so long, but I could hear that they were excited, or I could hear that they were nervous. I could hear that they were anxious. I could hear that they were that they had some concerns. And so, man, shout out to the free stuff. Shout out to the free stuff, free options that can help. I'd also encourage people while we're doing this day to day, week to week, month to month, don't forget long-term planning still needs to happen. We're in the middle of a strategic planning process in the middle of COVID. And we started last month. But I'd encourage you, don't neglect the strategic planning. Don't neglect getting, you can get so deep in the weeds that you forget the need to get up to 30,000 feet and really see where you're trying to go. Really unplug. So while we're doing all this work, I'd encourage people, don't forget how to rest. Don't forget how to unplug. Don't forget how to take a break. You can't hear God in the busyness of life. You hear God in the stillness, in the silence, when you're unplugged. And so I'd encourage people, even in the rat race, find a day, find a couple days, find 3 or 4 days, get whatever you need, but pull away and get some clarity so that you can get out of the weeds and really see kind of where God wants to take you.
No, that's great. Pastor Rafael, I saw your hand. I want you to comment on that free part, but I think we did a pivot a couple weeks back now on self-care, and I think, Pastor, you're totally on. I've heard from so many people who are because it used to you used to work up to Sunday, but now because there's so many important things between the week and you still have Sunday, you don't feel like you get a break. But in that one, I would encourage you all, listen to the pivot if you want to or not, but you got to do what I think that is because we're not going to be any good whenever this falls out, whenever this goes back to whatever the new normal is. We won't be any good at all. Pastor Rafael, I want to go to you, and then Pastor John, coming back to you and everybody else, because I want to end it asking about I appreciate you sharing about the strategic plan that you're doing now, but I want to talk about the frequency in this season of how you should plan. And then we'll wrap out. But Rafael, you had your hand up. I wanted you to go ahead.
Yeah, one thing about that, what you just mentioned is I think it's important too, like in this season of uncertainty where everybody's hustling, they're trying to figure out their new norm, is remember why you started. Get back to the why.
That's good.
Remember that. And just be mindful of like what fuels you, what recharges you, and go and do that, right? Yeah. But along the lines of something I just wanted to hone in on what John shared had to do with social media. It's free, and that's where people are at. And maybe the older demographic might be on Facebook or on Instagram. You know where your people are. You can use those tools and think about it as your church lobby. If you have a more just a clear, refined like social media strategy, you can direct those people back to your online services. But definitely use that as a tool because it's there, and
Yeah.
God is working through social media with all its positives and negatives, and He's working through that sphere as well. So I love that Instagram Live option. That's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
anyways,
No,
that's all.
that's great. Yeah, that's great. No, I appreciate that, Pastor Rafael. So, Pastor John, and then everybody else as well can chime in. But the rhythm of planning, right? So, what would we suggest? How would we suggest pastors and leaders look at planning? Do I plan now for 3 months? Do I plan now for 6 months? Do I plan for a whole year? I think they got the week to week down. But what's the rhythm of it in this season? And I want you to go first, but then everybody else can kind of chime in on that, please.
Sure. I would say, first of all, my answer is descriptive and not prescriptive, right? This is what we're doing. You've got to figure out what works, what rhythms, what, you know the rhythm and the routine and the schedule of how your church flows, of how your staff flows, of what your sermon stuff is. Everybody knows the giving cycle of the church, right? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. I don't care where you pastor, where you are. Yeah. That roller coaster financially is what it is.
Yeah.
We all saw some differences because God's grace just abounded for many of us. As this changed, we were all shifting, trying to figure out planning, and man, it's giving on drop. It's giving on drop. It's giving on drop. And many of us discovered giving actually went up or sustained. God's grace. There's no formula for that. That's the faithfulness of God. But as far as planning, here's I would say we're planning for reopening without knowing when we're going to reopen.
That's good.
You do not want to have a date for reopening before you start planning to reopen. I'd also say we're doing what we normally do, even if we don't know when and how we're going to execute it. That whole thing, walking by faith and not by sight, sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of
weird. Yeah.
I shifting sermon planning for me used to be 6 months in advance.
Okay.
So I would take 2 retreats a year, one in June and plan July through December, one in December, plan January through June. When I left that retreat, I would leave with the text for each week. I would leave with the series for each month. And I would leave with a behavioral objective that I want for each sermon. Then I'd do the writing throughout the week. But it just made so much sense and took so much weight off because I didn't come to each week with a clean slate.
Yeah.
With tools and kind of where I want to go. That shrunk for me. So I've gone from 6 months now to 2 months.
Okay.
So I'm planning sermon series 2 months in advance now, not 6. I had gotten ahead and had done almost all of 2020. And you see how that goes, right?
Yeah. All of us have.
It's hard, but it's the Lord's plans that prevail. So, so sermon planning for me went from 6 months to 2 months. Ministry planning for us has gone from 12 months to 3 months. Really focusing on each ministry, looking at 3 months down the road, because that's really about as far as we can look. Now they've got stuff in their minds. We all got stuff in our minds, but in terms of putting down, this is what we want to do. 3 months. 3 months is about as far as we go. So that's our short-term planning. Our long-term planning, we're still looking at the 3-year strategic plan. Still hiring and developing staff. In fact, we just hired through Vanderbloemen. Shout out to Vanderbloemen. Vanderbloemen helped us to find our executive pastor. Just hired him, and he'll be joining us probably mid to late October. Still trying to plan out and build for the second campus. Remember, we were in a movie theater. So when the movie theater closed, our campus closed, right? But what it did was it opened the door for us now to really think seriously, long and hard about a permanent space. I'm not going back into a movie theater because I can't control what sanitation looks like in that place. When I own the campus, when it's mine, when we lease it and it's our property, we can determine what cleanliness, what sanitation, what all those steps look like for us. Still developing leaders. still trying to put people in cycles of ministerial training, licensing, ordination, still working on those things. Of course, it's a little different, but you still got to do those things. That's the leadership development piece. And the discipling, still providing orientation, creating. We're even looking at our orientation model and probably going to launch that freshly in January because of that. So that's kind of a glimpse into our plan and how we shift.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think, as you said, it's descriptive, not prescriptive. So pastors need to look at it and kind of understand how they would do that, how God is calling them to do that, because you can't do what Pastor John is doing because you're not in the same place. You're not in the same team. You don't have the same team. But I think those keys, and what you said something about, and I remember before we went into Kingdom, we were at Reed Temple and we had several different campuses. And I remember one of the things you just said, if you're in the same space where you launched something and you weren't fully in your space, or you were in a high school and you can't be in there anymore, or middle school, this is an opportunity for you to, you get a free restart. You get a free out, because we had some of the same things. And I'm saying that because we did a campus in a movie theater, in a nightclub, I remember, but Sunday kept coming. This is an opportunity for you to look at that plan differently and still do online well, but know exactly what you want. So I just want to, you said it, so it's your point. I'm just trying to reiterate it because it is definitely God moving in a great way. So I think that's awesome. I'm going to end with this one. I'm going to ask Reverend Sam first, and then we'll kind of swing it around. But Reverend Sam, as we close out, as we think about pivoting our planning and we think about the future, what do we think planning will look like? But I also want to ask you, just because of the work that you do, and I've said this a couple of times, but Reverend Sam is a crazy great thought leader when it comes to planning worship experiences, planning not just for your church, but for your group of churches. I've seen him do it on a level that I haven't seen many people do it. And so I want to ask in that light, Sam, what do we think the future of planning for those kind of events are? Because it's going to look different, right? We're going to have some level of distancing, have to have some level of just being conscious of where people are, but then also the worship experience itself. What do we see for the future of that? And I'm going to ask everybody that same question, but Sam, I want you to kick us off with that, please.
Yeah, it's a tough question. Nobody has a crystal ball to see what worship will look like, but I have been daydreaming and night dreaming about it. And I've been reading actually and studying the book of Exodus. And it's really weird because they were, biblically in the text in the wilderness trying to reorganize. And a lot of biblical scholars talk about this crisis of faith and crisis of identity that they were in. They did not have their temple. All of this is being defined and reoriented throughout the wilderness. They give the commandments, they develop a process for worship, all throughout this moment that's there. So that kind of gives us, if we look at it biblically and try to think about where we are now, we have the free license to hear from God and have our own mountaintop experience and develop what will work for us in our communities. And so from there, I think what people should be spending the time right now is getting to know the people in their community and figuring out their needs. And from there, worship will be defined to be able to fit the context of where they're at. So yeah, maybe we may not have traditional singing in the ways that we would have it in the past. People will not be able to sit in different spaces, but I think that people will begin to develop more meaningful ways for people to connect with God and to provide that devotion to God. So maybe that means Vesper services or developing new types of ways to research the traditions of the past and develop traditions of the future. And so when people go back, start planning now, I think they should start planning with needs in mind and also figuring out where the voice of God is actually illuminating from. And so that may mean that we don't have the instruments for a while. It may mean having to wrestle with the uncomfortable pieces and try to really kind of figure out more than just the performance of worship. Because I think there was that video that went viral, I'm sick and tired of this church. I actually got tired of the performance of church because it became routine and we just came in, we knew what piece would happen here. And it was like, okay, we had the live show and now we're going to the next. And I think now people are looking for things that are relevant, they're meaningful, because the option is I can go and click to another space. And I don't think that a wise church will not stop their virtual opportunities or places of engagement. Because as if students have the options and families have the option of in-person or virtual, churches should have the option of what an in-person or virtual space will look like. And so I suggest planning for the year and trying to do a really good strategic plan of trying to imagine what you would like to look like as a faith community. And then also then back up and figure out, well, how do we get to the steps where we are empowered and feel confident that we can trust the digital space and realize that we can meet God through the Wi-Fi as well as we can meet God in the pews.
That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. Pastor Rafael and then Pastor John, you'll close us out with this question.
I think that's tweetable. You can meet God in the Wi-Fi, not just in the field. That's great. So for us, we actually did safely reopen all 35 locations. And so for us, worship, we record worship on Saturday before our first service. Kicks off at 5:30 p.m. Central and then goes on for the rest of the week. I will say, and I know it's different. I mean, this is a season where it's really hard to plan like we used to plan. And so as a team, I will say I can't speak for Craig because, of course, like his whole, like there's a team of people around him as well that do the sermon planning. But I will say for us, we forecast 90 days out. And we have operated 90 days out, but also too, we also have like what we call big rock events that happen throughout the year, Easter, Christmas, to name a few, right? And so so our planning hasn't really shifted that much from the digital space. If anything, we've increased in like people engaging with us on social media and traffic coming in. But for us, it's like we do a 30, 60, 90. We do the week to week.
Yeah.
And when we get more information from Craig, as far as like if there is going to be a pivot with a planned series, then we'll pivot with that planned series and go from there. The other thing that we've done too, like with worship, and this might be a little bit of a different idea than what we're accustomed to, but we've done this in the past as well, as we would have like a worship day. And we would record that each song, each that whole day with our worship team. And we may or may not have people in the audience, but you can use that as content for online.
Yeah.
So in the event that, worship, you can't worship like you used to, you can't capture it like you used to. If you pre-plan a day for worship, and it can still be as authentic and as genuine, because at the end of the day, we're really worshiping God. It's not about performance, like Reverend Sam said. It really isn't. It's about the pure heart of worship for God. You can capture that. Get some worshipers together and capture that in a day, and then use that to when you put together your sermon, your messages, along with worship online, is another way to do it. And the last thing I would say is, the new norm is, for a lot of churches will be, and currently is, it's a digital and in-person strategy. It's both. So it's you're meeting in a church building, but like you're also giving people that option, like Reverend Sam said, of like, hey, if I don't feel comfortable going into church. So we have people like that. Like I said earlier, we've reopened all of our locations, but we still have people that feel more comfortable attending online, and that's totally fine. We're not trying to like condemn anybody to go physically in church. You can still encounter God online. And so we give people that option, and it's been super, super helpful. People have been thankful. They can still give online. They can still connect with other believers online. So
well, that's great. I think the term I heard recently, my pastor used it, but I also heard Bishop Thomas use it. It's phygital. And so it's digital and physical together. I don't know who made it up, but I've heard that recently, and I think we all echo that same point exactly. Pastor John, so what for you to give us the thought on future? What do we think that looks like? What are we guessing? Because we're all guessing.
Sure. Man, everybody has an online campus. Anybody who's going to function going forward has to have, in some form, in some media, an online campus. Now, it's going to look different for everybody. It needs to look authentic. I think that's important. Reverend Sam talked about some of the artificial, superficial disingenuousness of the performance of worship. People smell fake in person and online. They can tell. So you want to be authentic in whatever you do. You want to be true to who you are. But I think that's attractive. So I think the big piece is that attendance now counts online. I know pre-pivot, the online audience was kind of eavesdropping into what was happening in the sanctuary. Because there were things available to the sanctuary and attention given to folks in the sanctuary that was not given to people online in some cases. Some people did it well, most people did. But now everything that's available, if you're offering in-person worship, that's got to be available to folks who are online. So it's got to be interactive. Every attendee, whether in person or online, must be treated, valued, loved, and ministered to with the same effectiveness and the same efficiency. What does that mean? That means if we're doing communion in person, there ought to be a way that communion can be done online. That means if we're doing altar call and we're receiving prayer requests, we ought to be able to do that online. That means if we are having, in our church experience, in our church expression, call and response moments where you can hear the people in the audience responding to worship and responding to the word, there ought to be an online mechanism that allows people to push buttons and type and respond to the message and to the experience. Everything that happens in person ought to be able to happen online. And to not do that in this case is really to mistreat a guest.
Wow, that's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. I hope y'all heard it. You know, Pastor John, he's a preacher back. He had 3 points on that close. I'm gonna put him in the joint, but I heard it. I said, I know he got a third. I know it's coming. But no, so that I think that's phenomenal. I think we have to make sure that we have an online presence. There's no way around it. I actually heard someone say recently that the future of church is the fact that everybody's online and we may have physical buildings. And so they even took it to a whole nother space. And I'm like, well, I'm not ready for that, but I hear you. But I think all that's awesome. We're wrapping up now. Any last things we want to say, anything that we thought about, want to share that we hadn't gotten in yet? I want to give everybody a moment to do that. And then I'll close us out with this episode. Any last things? Anybody?
Man, I just reiterate, you've been running hard.
Yeah.
You've been running hard. Everybody's been running hard. You got to rest.
Yeah.
You got to refresh. You got to reset. Yeah. You cannot give what you do not have.
That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. That's Rafael.
To say that, just wanted to say that we've talked a lot about worship, but realized that you're talking about ministry, and that ministry is beyond just the Sunday morning and the worship service. And I've been so blessed that right before COVID, I was coming back from a trip to the Dominican Republic because we were launching our partnership with Compassion International. Yes. So that has stayed consistent, and to hear about the children who are able to eat each day and the discipleship that's still happening in areas where poverty really, really hits is really, it warms my heart, and realizes that we're still doing ministry. So we put that at the forefront so that it's told into the story and is a part of worship and the conferences. And so people know that, hey, we're not just idle throughout this particular time, but we're actually doing the ministry of Jesus Christ. And so I think if we can think about and get people to reimagine and get more people involved in the ministry that you're doing throughout the week, that will see a greater return than folks attending a church anniversary.
That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. That's great. Pastor Rafael.
Yeah, I would also add all those great things. If this feels overwhelming and you're thinking to yourself, man, I heard about these tools, I don't know about this, I don't know about that, it feels overwhelming. You don't have to do it alone. You can collaborate with other pastors. And so again, I want to reiterate Open.Church as a tool for you to use. There's a community there where you can ask other people who are right there with you, just getting started, or maybe they've started and they're still trying to learn and build the plane as it flies. You don't have to do this alone. There are other pastors who want to help each other out. That's why we're on this call.
Yeah.
So that we can collaborate, because it's all about the capital C church. It doesn't necessarily matter about denomination or anything like that. We all want to reach people for Jesus. And you don't have to feel overwhelmed. You don't have to feel like you have to try to figure this out with you or your own team.
Yeah.
Let other people come alongside of you and help you out. Take that burden off.
Yeah, and Open.Church is a great tool because you have on there. I know I haven't used the gallery that Rafael is talking about when it comes to the kind of message board pieces and kind of partnering with. But I know Church Metric is on there. The Church Online platform is on there. There's even a tool to help evaluate staff. I forget what it's called, but that's on there. So there's a ton of free tools on there that are super awesome. But I thank you all for joining me today. Appreciate you all being on. If you are watching or listening, remember all of the show notes, all of the ministry information can be found on Ministry Pivot. Please make sure that you subscribe wherever you are, or you follow wherever you're watching. Also, make sure that you share this with somebody, share this with a friend, share this with a neighbor. I'd even say share this with a hater, share this with somebody that's going to help them grow so that they will be able to grow and pivot in their planning as well. I thank God again for my guests today, and thank God for their ministries and how they're continuing to grow and to strive as we all endeavor to seize the opportunity that God has given us as we pivot. Look forward to seeing you for our next Ministry Pivot. Share it. Don't forget to download the show notes. In the show notes are not just notes, but it's also questions for you to go over with your team, so that you and your team, and you heard that today, that you can't do this alone. And so you should be able to think through what this looks like with your team, with your ministry leaders, so that you all can grow as well. I look forward to seeing you next time on Ministry Pivot. If you need any questions from me, you can just go to ministrypivot.com and fill out the form, or just the email address that's there, or the phone number that's there, so we can be in contact with you. God bless. See you soon. Peace.